Hello and welcome back to You Don't Say by the Mentorship Collective. I am Nikki,
And I'm Hyland.
and we are so excited to have you here for our second episode. We wanted to dive in today a little bit more about our clinical fellowships, what they were like, and kind of what led us to creating the Mentorship Collective and our first program that was uniquely made for clinical fellows. So, Hyland, did you want to start off by talking a little bit about well, actually, why don't we even dive into what made you become a speech therapist first?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I originally was a nursing major. So I knew I wanted to be in the field to help people in college. But then when I got to upper division nursing, I decided that it wasn't for me and that I was more interested in human behavior. So I switched majors to psychology. And that's when I joined a lab that was, an autism spectrum disorders research lab, where it was looking at, different symptomatology of autism and all kinds of really interesting aspects of autism. And I fell in love with, children and working with children with an autism spectrum disorders diagnosis. And I worked in an autism lab. Diagnostic center as well in undergrad, and then I worked at Vanderbilt University after that because I thought I wanted to be a developmental psychologist, and I thought that I wanted to do diagnostic evaluations, and I wanted to get my PhD. Well, after working there and working in research and diagnostics, I decided, nope, I met this amazing team of therapists who were working with autistic children and children with a variety of diagnoses, and it was speech language pathologists and behavioral therapists, occupational therapists, and I thought, I want to open up that world of communication because in undergrad I did do some research on language specifically and language development. And it just spoke to me, and I knew, nope, I am not supposed to be a developmental psychologist. I want to be on this child's journey from start to finish, not just a part of that diagnostic process. So I applied for graduate school, and that's where it all started.
That's awesome. It's so fun when your life suddenly you think you're on one path and it just
Yeah,
veers you off and it naturally happens, but then you find you are where you're meant to be. It's really
absolutely.
exciting when that happens.
Yeah, and I just followed my gut, my heart the whole time. I thought, nope, this is not where I'm supposed to be. This is not where I'm supposed to be. And then I just knew in my heart that the direction was supposed to be working in communication with children, and it's been amazing ever since.
I love that. And you posted something yesterday on Instagram that was just so cool. You helped a little child. You supported that family in. Why don't you tell everyone? I don't want to take the
Yeah.
words from you.
Yeah, so I think it's important when we're on our journeys to really embrace the small wins that actually are huge wins for our clients because that's what helps keep us going. And so yesterday, a kiddo that I have been working with for several months who started out with no language and communication skills really at all and very, very limited engagement, actually looked at her mom and said, "I love you, Mama," for the first time, and just waterworks from all of us, right? It was the best moment, and that just is my aha moment yet again, of why we do what we do and why I'm so glad that I picked the profession that I am in because it truly is a gift to be a part of that communication journey and open up that whole world for our kiddos.
It really is. So your little left turn really has led
Yeah.
you down the right path.
100%, without a doubt. And then I've only done private practice, which has been amazing. And I love that I've only done private practice because it gave me such exposure to a variety of age ranges and diagnoses and challenged my clinical skills in a way that I feel like I potentially wouldn't have been challenged in other settings. And I love it because I feel confident now that I could get a job in any setting and do it pretty well. Would I need to refresh some things? Of course. But overall, I think that the private practice realm as well really helped challenge me and set me up for success to provide really good treatment for across a variety of diagnoses.
Yeah, and you and I are both a little bit biased when it comes towards
Yeah,
that. So disclaimer,
we are.
everyone, we love private practice. There are amazing school therapists and hospital therapists. We have friends
Yes.
of every setting, adults, geriatrics, all of those things. But we are a little bit more biased towards private practice. We love those itty bitties and that early language
Yeah.
development. So take that with a grain of salt. We think every single therapist can
Yes.
come from a really great setting.
We absolutely do. We are biased. We will tell you. We tell all of our students that as well and clinicians that we work with. But we appreciate everyone because we need all of us. It takes a village to support all of our patients. But yeah, that's kind of my backstory. And what about you? Tell us a little bit about what made you want to be a speech language pathologist.
Yeah, so I really, gosh, when I was young, my dad likes to say it was him who has
Mm-hmm.
kind of geared me towards this. My mom says that is not true, that she actually, I went to a college counselor when I was in high school and I tested for a bunch of different careers so that they could tell me like where I potentially find interest. And it was like, I don't even remember all the questions. It was long time ago. But I know I filled it out, and one of the careers was a speech language pathologist. And the only exposure I'd had to a speech language pathologist is I knew that my cousin had one. She has a diagnosis of Down syndrome. She's just like one of the most amazing people you've ever met in your whole life. She's much cooler and much smarter than me, and probably our whole family. And she's funnier than everyone as well. But she had a speech language pathologist, and so I was like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. I'd always wanted to be a teacher, but I wanted that little bit more of that one-on-one. And so I learned a little bit about the career. I thought about doing it, and I was like, I think that like I'm just gonna go ahead and say that this is what I want to do. So I was young, 18 going in, and I had already declared my major as a speech language pathologist. And then I started taking some courses, and oh my God, I just loved it so much. It's like when it sings to your soul of just all of
Yeah.
these different things. And so the more that I dove in, the more that I loved it. Side note, my dad sat next to a speech pathologist on a plane. And that's why he says that he is the one who got me to be a speech pathologist. But yes, no, it was a lot more of what my mom says. My mom's account is
I love
correct.
it. I love it.
So yeah, that's how I kind of ended up on that journey. So I went in right away at 18 and started. So not everyone does that. So I think you had
Yeah,
a lot more of a unique path. Whereas
definitely.
I kind of went in not knowing what I wanted, but I found it on the way.
Yeah, but I think what's cool about both of our paths is it led us to the same thing.
Hmm.
It's just it took us different, there were different routes and streets and little turns to get there. But that's I think what, students need to hear, and that's what clinical fellows need to hear and early career SLPs need to hear is everyone's path and journey is going to be
Hmm.
unique. It's just about following your gut and following your instincts to get you to where you need to be. And I think that is what's so cool is I've met so many SLPs, early career SLPs that actually did what I did, and they were a non-major or non-background, SLP, and then they went into graduate school. And it's really neat because it gives you skill
Hmm.
sets that maybe other SLPs in your program didn't have access
Hmm.
to. And then vice versa. The fact that you had this passion from the get go has just kept you going this
Hmm.
entire time directly to achieve those goals to help support these kiddos. So it's really neat. I think it's really cool when we have these different paths and all meet up.
Yeah, I love it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about when you applied for your CF, what that was like, and once you got your CF, we can dive in a little bit. We don't have to dive into everything about our CFs, but maybe just that
Yeah.
entire like first part of it.
Yeah. So I think that right now a lot of people have applied for graduate school, and that's great. And that process is a whole different ball game. And then when you get into grad school, there's a lot of emphasis, obviously, on the clinical and the academic. But then when you get to that point in grad school where you have to apply for a CF, there's not a ton of information out there as to what you're supposed to do. You're just told that you're supposed to apply for a clinical fellowship. And for me, I knew that I wanted to move, and I just started researching clinics that were hiring. That's
Mm.
all that I did. I started researching private practices in San Diego that were hiring. And this is just a cautionary tale for everyone. So I do like to tell this. And so then I said, well, I probably need to. These are the days before Chat GBT as well, where you didn't have any assistance and anyone really telling you what to do. And I thought, okay, I had a professor who was my mentor, and I love her so much. Her name is Dr. Angela Barber. She's still my mentor to this day, and she helped shape me into who I am. And she really emphasized the private practice job market because of that variety of
Mhm.
diagnoses and ages and exposure and challenges. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do private practice, but I don't know where to start. I just emailed them. I literally just Googled a list of private practices in San Diego and emailed them and asked if they were hiring, told them who I was, attached my resume, and said I was interested. That's it. I didn't know what questions to ask other than that. And then I got some bites. And from those bites, I had interviews, and they were all great. And, they asked a lot of different types of questions, from scenario questions about what would I do with certain clients to, okay, how many hours are you willing to work? What days are you willing to work? How many hours? And that's where I kind of dropped the ball and should have asked more questions and known more. And I didn't.
It's so hard though, because all you're thinking is, I want this job. I want to
Yeah,
be in San Diego. I want to be in a private practice. And I mean, social media wasn't like it was, like it
no,
is now for us.
not at all.
So I can see why you ended up
Hmm.
doing, and not even asking questions. A lot of times, as even just women, we don't ask for more. We don't ask to negotiate. We just say yes, and we're grateful for it. And
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that, if that's what you've done. I did that as well. So it's remembering that we can ask, and you can ask those questions. And if someone's offended by those questions, then maybe it's a sign that that's not the right workplace for you.
absolutely. And that's what I did. Is there was a job that was willing to have me start as soon as I got my license in California, which is a whole process. And I think I asked to negotiate maybe in one email, and I know the way that I did it wasn't correctly because I got maybe a little bit more money, and I just didn't even
Hey,
ask.
that's
Yeah,
good.
it was something. It was something. But what I didn't ask was about the mentorship, the
Mm,
supervision. I didn't know to say, okay, is my supervisor on site?
mhm.
Is my supervisor, how many sessions are they observing? Do I have consistent access to them? So many things. How many hours will I be expected to bill? Um, so many of those questions that I think we can kind of hash out today for CFs, because I didn't know, and I just did exactly what you said. I took the job. I was excited I had a job, and it was decent-ish pay, and I was moving to San Diego, and that's literally what happened for my CF.
Gosh, isn't it wild to think back of all of the information that you had now, if you had it back then, the changes that you
Yeah.
might have made? And like, that's part of the process of growth. It's just now that we have all of this information, we're like, wow, this would be amazing to have just
Yeah.
these, just like a fraction of the
Oh, yeah.
questions to ask that we currently do.
Totally. Just a fraction, just anything. And it wasn't anyone's. I want to make it very clear that when we say these things, we're not saying that grad school is bad. Grad school is amazing, and they
Hmm.
prepare us, and we love our grad programs and our supervisors and our directors and professors. Um, it's the culture of our industry that we are in, that you just spread your wings and fly without any sort of support. And also, people don't have time.
Hmm.
They don't have
Hmm.
time to sit down with every single student and tell you exactly what questions to ask.
Hmm.
And that's why we're doing what we're doing, to help keep people in this field and help you feel more prepared and confident.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, my experience with applying for grad school is a little bit different
Hmm.
because I was in San Diego. So I went to
Hmm.
San Diego State University for my undergrad and my grad program, Go
Hmm.
Aztecs,
Hmm.
and love that program so much. What's funny about that is it became almost like gosh, uh, it became a little bit like Hunger Games at the end of it, because everyone's going out and there's
Mm.
probably like 40 of us, 45 of us, and there were limited jobs. There's a lot more jobs available now than there were back in
Hmm.
2012. 2012, it was a little bit more limited and what you're looking for. And I knew I wanted private practice. And so I started emailing, like you did, all of the different private practices. And we were all getting interviews at the same time. So
Mm.
it was very cutthroat, I guess is the word. It was very like hush hush. You didn't talk about it. It wasn't like now where you kind of talked about things. You were a little bit more open. You supported each
Right.
other. It was a little bit more like, don't say where you're going because someone else might apply there as well. And it was so, I'll never forget this. I go to an interview and that interview, so this is the job I end up taking too, like disclaimer. I go to an interview and my roommate is there. And I didn't know my roommate was going to be there. She was also a speech pathologist. We didn't
Hmm.
talk about we were both going to interview for this job. And so she shows up, I show up. we're both discombobulated. Probably me more because I get a little bit like, oh God. Oh,
I can see
go,
your face
oh
as
my
this is
God, it was,
happening right now.
oh God, I'll never forget. I go back in the room. I have an interview. It's in the OT's office. There's just stuff everywhere. I'm very disorganized. I'm just blabbering in the interview. I forget my purse. So I'm like, oh my God.
Oh
I like walked out, thank you so much, and then I like had to walk back in and be like, I forgot my purse. Can I take my purse? My roommate at the time was in there interviewing. It was a mess. I was like, I didn't get that job. Definitely didn't get it. I actually also interviewed at the job that you ended up taking, not at the same
no.
time period, but the same
Right.
company. And I really wanted that one. I just felt like it seemed more professional. Now that I look back, I'm like, no, the more lax type, like chill
Yeah.
vibe is way more me. And I ended
Yeah.
up in that just because like they were still interviewing everyone and they couldn't make a decision. And I ended up getting an offer from this other practice. And I was just like, I'm going to take it. And I'm glad I did. I got lucky that I took that one and did not wait because this would ended up being the right type of setting for me. And I had a phenomenal CF supervisor. It was a great place to work. I had some of my best friends are still from that practice. So it worked out for me. It doesn't always work out for everyone, but you can always change after your CF if you need to, just like you made a change
Yeah.
because you needed to. But it was just one of those things that if everything crumbles during your interview process, don't panic because sometimes you can still get the job. I still got the job. I think they liked that about me as I just kind of went with it. Even
Right.
though I wasn't perfect, I didn't show up perfect. I was just like humble and I admitted that I made a mistake. I left my purse back there. I just kept on moving through it, even when you feel like you're fumbling, and I still got that job. So that's how I ended up at my CF. So it was, I forgot about all of that
I
until
love
right
it.
now, as I'm telling you.
Yes, such a wild ride. And I love when you tell that story. And it's also, again, just so interesting how different backgrounds and different situations can totally happen. Because I went to school at University of Alabama. Roll Tide. You guys will hear me talk a lot about Roll Tide and sports.
I've learned a lot.
But I've also learned a lot at San Diego State through Nikki and gotten really close to San Diego State staff and, helped support different types of activities with their programs. And it's been incredible to see how all of our programs do prepare us so well. And when we get to that point where we're deciding about a CF, it's all there's a lot of circumstances. But what we can do is, Nikki and I as mentors and other people can help make your life a little bit easier during that transition by providing you with a little bit of coaching and examples of things you can ask during those interviews and you should ask, right? Especially when it comes to your supervision and your mentorship. And and my CF experience was a challenge for sure. And there's so many things that I wish I would have known. And because two things can be true at the same time, it helped shape me into the therapist that I am. And I did have a wonderful mentor there. I wish I had more access to her. And that's what a lot of times we will hear from clinical fellows that we've supervised, right? So I think it's important for us to remember that when we're looking at all of our journeys and thinking about questions that we want to ask and that we can help prepare the CFs to ask in their interviews.
100%. Why don't we dive right into that? What questions, and this is some of these questions you can even ask after your CF. It doesn't have to be uniquely in your CF. I went to lunch with a CF that we had at a practice, and she's just so phenomenal. She lives in Chicago, and I just moved out to Illinois. So I met up with her and my daughter, and it was so much fun. And I was asking her questions just because we were talking about her. She's interviewing at different places or when she was interviewing. And I asked her, I was like, oh, did you ask how many hours? How many hours are they expecting? And she's like, these are good questions. These are good questions. So even sometimes after, you forget that you can ask these questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with that. That's a great question to start with is how many hours am I expected to bill each week?
And how many am I scheduled?
Yes, correct. And how many am I scheduled? Exactly. The reason for that is you want to think about your work-life harmony. We're never going to fully have a balance, right? That's a conversation for another day. But what does that harmony look like, especially as a new clinician? So how many hours am I scheduled? How many hours am I booked? People are going to ask the question, Nikki, what are the ideal numbers? What should those look like? What would you say to that?
So in a private practice setting, I'm going to go ahead and say I'd ideally say 31 hours is what
Hmm.
you're booked at.
Agreed.
30 31 is like what you're booked at, and you're seeing on average 28 hours of therapy. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, but you're going to average about 28 hours. What that does is that gives you enough time to be able to do your paperwork,
Right.
your all of your notes. Both Hyla and I have worked a schedule like
Hmm.
this, and it is absolutely doable. It's not like you're not coasting, but you're never going to coast in this job. It's just not show up and leave and just not think about again.
Right.
We know what we want. There's always going to be something to do, I guess is what I'm saying. You're not going to come
Yeah.
in the next day and be like, oh, I got nothing to do. I'm bored.
Nope.
It's just not like that. It
Mm-mm.
might be the first week you start because you're just acclimating and you're playing, but there is always paperwork to do. So I think that's for me personally the balance that I find for CFs. We're going to bump it up a little bit by 2 hours once you have your Cs because you don't need all that supervision. You don't have that one-to-one meeting
Right.
and you are expected to be independent. But again, you're seeing at even after your CF, I would say 33 hours is what I would personally,
Hmm.
as a private practice owner, book someone at. And then I would expect them to see about 29 to 30 hours. So you're really kind of acclimated by your CF, and then by your CCC, you really should be able to be a little bit more independent and see a couple more kiddos. It doesn't add that much. But that's kind of the ideal schedule that we created when we were at a private practice,
Hmm.
and that's the schedule I worked, and I also think it's a really doable schedule.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that if you should be cautionary of any interviews that tell you maybe we don't know how many hours we're going to book
Hmm.
you. It's going to depend on the client needs,
Hmm.
right? So to me, that's a little bit of a flag of skirt. Let's think about this. What are they actually then going to book me if they can't tell me?
Hmm.
Um, I also think you should be cautious of those that book you very little, right? And
Hmm.
say, oh, well, we're going to start you out with only 5 or 6 hours, and then build you up. Now, if you're
Hmm.
going to a private practice that's new and they tell you on the front end when they interview you, yeah, we've got to build your schedule. That's great. But if they can't guarantee you a consistent number of hours, that's also something to think about because that could mean some things about that practice. Um, and then, in terms of how this translates into the school districts and the hospitals, I would say that the hours are similar for a hospital setting, right? A lot of outpatient settings are similar to private practice, but they do have those productivity standards that
Hmm.
you're going to want to ask about. So you're going to want to ask, what is my productivity expectation? So
Hmm.
am I expected to bill, at 80% productivity, 90%? And then with the school, it's going to be the number of kiddos on your caseload. And you're
Hmm.
going to want to know how many am I in charge of? And you're going to want to think about for every kid on your caseload, you're going to have an IEP
Hmm.
that you're going to have to write for that child. So we're not experts on those sites, but we do know that the lower the numbers or the more average the numbers you can find, the better, instead
Hmm.
of it being this super, super high expectation of a billable rate.
Hmm. Yeah, and you want to think about if you are building with a practice and that's something that you've wanted to do, you have to hit specific numbers average per week to be able to graduate with your CF
Right.
or graduate from CF to
Hmm.
CCC. So be able to show on your RPE. That's what it's called in California. I know it's called other things here. Um, your RPE license that you get when you're a CF. It's called, I forget something else in Washington
Hmm.
and in Texas. It all has a different name.
Yeah.
Whatever your provisional licensure is, you're going to have a specific amount of numbers that you have to bill and have within your whole entire CF experience. So you want to make sure that that average is going to be sufficient so you don't have to go longer in your CF as well. You might have to file for an extension
Right.
if you go too long. So those are important things to take
Hmm.
into account based on your state. It's not just ASHA that matters. Your state also matters a lot. You need to make sure that within your state you're complying
Right.
with the hours. That way that you are able to graduate and get your C's on time, but also just get your state license. So it's not
Hmm.
even just your C's. And we talk a lot about the C's often as a speech therapy field, but the state license is like, this is where it's at. You need
Yeah.
to make sure you have your state license. So those are just important factors to take into consideration because it is exciting to build, but it's having someone who knows that they can get you those amount of hours is important. Also, if you're getting paid hourly, You don't want to go somewhere unless you're taking over probably a full schedule or a schedule that's
Right.
pretty booked. Because if you're going hourly, unless you can afford to take that dip, building a schedule can take, I mean, for us, when we were a busy private practice, I think it took us probably about, it didn't take us as long, 4 to 5 weeks to
Yeah.
really build a schedule, but it was probably about 2 months until they were really consistent with new kids.
Right. And that's that. So that leads into the next great question is this a per diem position or an hourly position, or is this a salaried position? Sometimes when companies post jobs, they will post both. And oftentimes that's just a way to get an interview with you because they want to see also what you're looking for. And we know this because we have hired several people, a lot of people. And so some companies, especially larger companies, will do that. And so you want to ask, or you want to make it clear that you're looking for a salaried position. The reason we recommend salaried for clinical fellows is, to Nikki's previous point, you want to make sure that you have consistency within your hours so that you have access to your hours so that your CF is 36 weeks. It's that 9-month time frame. It's not going into a year plus. And that's what can happen if you are per diem or hourly, because you're not guaranteed hours. You are just seeing who you see that week. You're also not going to probably get benefits, right? So if you need insurance benefits or things like that, you're not going to have access to that. Oftentimes PTO and sick time isn't accumulated with an hourly position like it is with a salaried. You oftentimes don't have access to CEU funds, right? Or funds, not that you need that as a CF, but long term, 401ks or retirement plans. So any of those larger hanging benefits as an hourly position, you're not necessarily going to have. Also, your guaranteed income. With per diem, you want to think about you're getting paid for the children that you're seeing. If they don't show up, maybe there's a no-show policy, but for the most part, if they cancel, you're not getting paid. Whereas with salary, you're getting paid. So you want to think about that as a CF, because if you're new early in your career and you're just trying to get your C's and get into the career, you need consistency, you need a consistent schedule, and you need consistent hours to achieve that.
Absolutely. And you want to think about those additional things like Highland said. What are the health benefits? What plan is it? Can I elect into a PPO or an HMO? How much is the employer contributing towards the health plan? What is my 401k? How much is the employer contributing to the 401k?
Right.
What are CEU funds? What does it look like for salary? What does it also look like after when you receive your C's and your state license? Is
Right.
there a bump? Is there not a bump? So you can start to evaluate whether that whatever you're signing up for, does that work for your life? Who is my supervisor? They might not have the exact person, because oftentimes we didn't have the exact person. We had a couple people, and we would match them based on the personality types that
Right.
we thought would be most successful together. And so if they have different ideas, like, oh, I think Highland and you would be a really good match, we got to make sure it works with her schedule, or different ideas. Sometimes you can meet with the person who's going to be your CF
Yeah.
feel. You don't have to be a perfect match. I think that's important. You don't have to be
Yeah.
like, oh my God, this person's going to be my best friend in the whole wide world. But you want to feel like you can ask questions and you're comfortable.
Yeah.
And sometimes having a little bit of a different personality type can help support you and push you in different ways than you didn't think that you could be pushed in, that can be very valuable in your CF. But
Right.
those are important things. So who is my CF supervisor? How much time does my CF supervisor get in addition to their own schedule to be able to supervise me? Am I going to have scheduled times for them to see kids, or are they going to have to figure it out within cancellations? Those are important things to figure out. I don't know what else. Highlight.
Yeah. Weekly meetings. Am I going to have consistent access to them? What does that access look like? Are they on site? Obviously it's ideal if your supervisor is physically on site with you, if possible. And if they're not on site, what does that look like? Like simply asking that question. What does that look like? How often am I meeting with them? And I think every state's going to have different requirements in terms of their supervision and what that looks like. So the state of California is going to look different than probably Illinois. But you're going to want to know what that looks like and maybe look ahead of time at your state and their guidelines for supervision. I think also what is it going to look like when I finish my C's? Are there going to be any significant changes? I would want to know things too, like, am I going to have my own office space? Am I going to have my own area to work in? Or if it's a remote job, are you, or even not a remote job, are you, is there any sort of equipment that I need to purchase? Do I need to bring my own toys or my own materials, or do you provide that for me? That's a big one because some companies do and some don't, right?
Yep. Am I on one site or am I on two sites? Am I across
Right.
multiple sites? Where am I? How many SLPs are currently employed? And how often do you guys meet? It would be important to kind of
Yeah.
understand what your collaboration is going to look like. Do we share clients? Do I have my own caseload? Those are
Right.
all important questions that you want to ask because it gives you a good idea of where you're going to be and what this 9-month period, these 36 weeks, are going to look like for you.
Yeah. What's the expectation for my paperwork? Is there a certain amount of turnaround for reports that I need to get in?
How many evaluations do I get per
Yes, the
week?
evaluations is huge, right? Is there a set evaluation time on my schedule? And is there a certain number that I'm expected to complete per week, per
You're going
month?
to also want to know, am I submitting to insurance? Do you have a team submitting to insurance? Are you working with insurance? All of those processes, kind of that nitty gritty, that's a little bit more nitty gritty because you will learn how to do all of that, but you have
Right.
extra time for it too. So it's
Yeah.
important. A lot of teams now, I don't find it as prevalent as I did back when I first started my CF, that they're having SLPs submit to insurance. It's typically now the owner or has a team of admin who does it. So it isn't as prevalent. I don't think that's as important of a question, but if you're looking for extra questions and you want to look knowledgeable, that's a good question to ask if you're going to be submitting to insurance. And what is your relationship with insurance for that family going to look like?
Absolutely. And what are the aspects that I'm in charge of? Am I in charge of any sort of scheduling, reschedules? What happens when there are cancellations? Is my schedule filled with another child? Can I expect that? For makeup sessions, what does that look like? Sort of what is my role and responsibility versus our scheduling team? Just little questions like that so that you know where your time is going. Because you also want to ask about your administrative time. Do I have time set aside on my schedule daily for working on notes and reports? Can you map that out for me and what does that look like?
Do these admin times move? Do they not move? We had a very specific rule on when admin times could move, how many sessions could go
Right.
in a row before there had to be an admin spot. So our scheduling team understood they could not book a therapist solid from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. That was not allowed at our practice. On the pure basis that we know that you need a second. You need a second to breathe. You need a second to write some notes. And you also need a second to be able to use the restroom and grab some water and be a human being for a minute and just turn off. And you cannot just be back to back to back to back, especially when it's 30-minute sessions and you don't have that extra little barrier.
Right.
Sometimes with the hour sessions, you do 45 minutes clinical in the last 15 minutes. You get some time. So it depends on your setting. You really want to figure out what this looks like.
Yeah. So there's so many more questions that we could dive into, but this is a great start for things that you can think about as you're looking ahead to your CF. And it's one of the main reasons we created our program specifically for CFs. So Nikki, do you want to give a little rundown of our program?
Yeah, we'll do a real short rundown because we're running out of
Yeah.
time here. But essentially, what we did is Highland and I, we would just be at happy hours and we would be talking about, gosh, wouldn't it be so cool if we could create something that we could reach more CFs with and we could help people have the experience that we wanted and that we were able to give and the experience that I had and pieces of the experience that Highland had. And so this was born quite a few years ago. And then she and I decided on the weekends we were going to work towards this. And kind of this has become our dream. And so within this program, we've taken everything that we have done to support the CFs that we have worked with and that we have had personally, either Highland or I. And then we work with our CFs together. And we have taken all of that knowledge, everything that they have given us feedback on, what really helps them, what doesn't help them, how they feel like they learn, and all of the mistakes that we have made, plus all of the successes we have made. And we've created a program specifically for the CF experience. It's just wonderful, filled with mentorship, filled with ideas. It has ideas on how to make sure you're getting your paperwork done, how to have that work-life harmony, how to collaborate with others, how to have conversations that are uncomfortable with parents, how to work on that parent education, how to even just think about therapy. And I think probably one of the most important parts is looking at the child and understanding, what do you see, what do you hear, and breaking that down so that you feel successful no matter who walks in the door. You don't have to have information on a child to be able to provide therapy as they come in or do an evaluation. I think that's something that we get a little bit stuck on at times in grad school because we had so much information.
Right.
And there's a point to that. There was a point to having all of the information and figuring it out. And there's also real life within a setting where you don't have any information. You have maybe the child's age and their the date of birth, and maybe one single line of what parent concerns might be. And that's it. And they can walk in that door, and we want everyone to be able to take that within therapy as well as evaluations, and every single day to be able to provide therapy without a lot of planning. This is super important, following the child's lead, but also understanding where they are. You can't just follow a lead. We're not just following a child around all day. That would be fun. It also would be really challenging, but understanding the point of what it means to follow their lead, how to identify where that child is struggling and how to help them get to that next level within each activity and each moment. It's going to be a little bit different. So we're really excited for all of this information that we have jam-packed into it. It is so wonderful. It's not hard to take in. It's really easy. It is a format similar to where you're just listening. A lot of the CFs who have taken it have just listened to it on their drive to work, on the drive from home. You don't have to watch the videos. You can listen to the program and learn at the same time. And the CFs who have taken it have told us how wonderful it has been to support them. And they've learned so much in conjunction with their wonderful supervisors. And that's the whole point, is to be able to get as much information as you can in a manageable way to help support you, so you feel confident within your CF. So when you are not a CF any longer and you don't have consistent access to this mentor that you've had access to for 9 months, you can walk out and be confident in any setting that you go into.
Right. And it's important to emphasize that it's supplemental in addition to the supervision you're getting, because a lot of times you don't know what you don't know until you're in the middle of your CF. And then our experience has been, oh, wait, I wish I just had a little bit more, or maybe I had access to an additional mentor. And that's also part of this program, is mentorship meetings that we can schedule with you to really dive into your specific questions for your caseload. And it's something we'll talk about more and more as we go in these podcasts. But we hope that this episode really helped prepare you for things that you can be asking about as you're applying for your clinical fellowship, thinking about it, and also know that we're here. We're here to support you. That's what these podcasts are for, and that's what our programs are for. And we're super excited moving forward. So I guess it's Valentine's Day today, the day we're recording this. Hope everyone had a wonderful Valentine's Day, or has a wonderful Valentine's Day. And continue to follow us at mentorshipcollective.com. That's our website, Instagram, TikTok. This is, so I guess we're wrapping it up for today.
We sure are. Thank you for joining us, and we can't wait to see you next week.
Thanks so much, guys. Have a good one.